group of people, so I really am going to enjoy speaking with you guys. I have never felt like a teacher myself, so a lot of educational conferences I go to, I sit there and I go, why am I here and listening to this? But it seems like you guys are all engaged in something that is super cool and very hands-on. I did drive in from my boat this morning, so it took about an hour and a half. I stayed out on Catawba Island last night on it because this is my second day of summer, so it better feel like it, right? So Barb gave you guys a good taste of who I am. I have never, even though I've taught for 23 years, I've never thought of myself really as a teacher. I've thought of myself as a business person or an entrepreneur within the classroom. So today's focus will be a little bit about, how do you inspire students to think of themselves as entrepreneurs within the classroom as well. Obviously, I could not get into my Google account for some reason, but I pulled up Entrevation.com, which is our website for this year's project that we did. Do we have sound attached to this?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so I'll just play this quick little blurb, give you a taste of what Entrevation was. So that was just a little 30-second ad that my students did to promote our event that we were doing. And you could see from the little clips in the classroom that it looks a lot like ThinkBox, and that we modeled the classroom after a creative space. So there aren't desks and rows. The space is very creative kind of space, very bright colors like what you're seeing here, very flexible. What you don't see in that was that we also have a school store attached to it. Doesn't look like your traditional Boosters school store where it might be an old closet or a concession stand. It looks like something out of a mall, and it does really, really well in sales. So the students that come into the program are definitely coming into a day of work versus coming into a day of school. So I probably need to step back a couple steps and tell you a little bit about who is coming into the program. I teach at Beechwood High School. Those of you familiar with the Cleveland area know it's on the east side of Cleveland here. It's right up the street, maybe 5 miles or so. It is an affluent suburb of Cleveland. The population there is definitely a well-educated population. But I have taught in districts. I started my career in Sandusky. I went on to Vermilion schools. Came down to Cuyahoga Falls schools for 7 years and then ended up in Beechwood. So I have seen the whole spectrum of educational systems and socioeconomic backgrounds, and what I'm going to share with you today, I truly believe can be replicated in any kind of school environment that you're in. Whether it's a rural district in southwestern Ohio, or you're in an urban district somewhere else, or a nice suburban district elsewhere, the principles that I'm going to share with you can be replicated in anywhere. So who are my students? They are not just students from Beechwood High School. I actually get students from 10 different high schools. We belong to a career consortium called XL Tech. So students come into my classroom from Solon, Orange, Aurora, Mayfield, Brush, Willoughby South, Chagrin Falls, West Geauga, and Beechwood. So 10 different high schools. They're all seniors that come into the program. They fight to get into the program. So their junior year, we start recruiting people that we think would be good fits, and then other students that have told us for years, like, I'm going to be in your class my senior year. So this year we took 45 students into it. We had well over 100 students apply for the program. Why do they want to come into this? Well, because it's definitely, it has a reputation that precedes it. They see the students that are all seniors doing great things, getting dressed up, going out, traveling, running these businesses and these big events. So the kids that come into the program are definitely, they definitely want to be there. And they know that there are a lot of people waiting to take their spot if the environment's not good for them. Seniors coming in from 10 different high schools. In the beginning of the year, I spend 8 weeks with an organization, or 8 sessions with an organization called ELA. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with it, Effective Leadership Academy. It was started by a lady here in Shaker Heights, and we were the pilot program 9 years ago for it. ELA, their basis is basically that they are inspiring people to think about themselves as leaders, to identify their own strengths, sort of like strength finders. What are the things that you're really good at, and taking the things that you're really good at and developing those. So in the beginning of the year, we do a lot of that, self-leadership, forming as a team, coming together, getting to know each other. And then by the second week, we have created the class into a company. So we use the Junior Achievement Company program. If you guys are familiar with JA, you know that there's programming from K through 12. I've done all sorts of, I've done Titan and Globe and company program. We use the company program format all year long. So a lot of you that might be familiar with JA Company know that it might be an after-school activity. Some people run it as a semester class or a semester a project within maybe an entrepreneurship class. I run it year-round within the marketing class. If you look at JA Company program and you look at the marketing court standards, the overlap is almost 100%. So how do we form ourselves as a company? Well, we look at any company structure. Take Apple. We have CEOs of the class. We have vice presidents of finance, human resources, marketing, production, sales, communication, corporate responsibility. So basing some of that on their strengths that we determine through Strength Finders. So if they are really interested in the accounting end of business, they might be well suited for our finance department. If they are the motivators or they might be really good in the human resources department. So we structure ourselves into the company and then decide, well, we have already started at that point deciding what are you guys going to do. Barb gave a nice introduction of Green Dream and Entrevation and sustainability. So my class about 9 years ago, we were in the brainstorming phase of what are we going to do this year, and sustainability was becoming really important in the dialogue in business, and I challenged the kids, let's think about something that we can do that relates to sustainability. So they all identified products that they could sell. Candlesticks made out of recycled glass, reusable bags, all kinds of interesting eco kind of products. And are you guys all familiar with SWOT analyses, SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats? So I had the students go through the SWOT analysis of each of their items that they were thinking about selling. And in the end, one of the students that was sitting in the back said, what difference is it really going to make if we sell 50 candlesticks made from recycled glass or 100 reusable shopping bags? What can we really get people to do to make a difference in the world? From that one student's comment grew the Green Dream. And that first year, our thought was, not everybody's going to be able to buy a hybrid car or put solar panels on their house, but what are the little things that each person can do in their own lives? So how do we show people what they're going to do? How do we inspire them? So we thought, let's put together a little business expo. Cleveland seemed to have a lot of companies that were going green. So the first year we had maybe 60 companies and organizations that the students went out and solicited to come and participate with us. We had a crowd of about 1,500 people. So all this started in September of that year. We had our first Green Dream Expo in April of that year. That was way more successful than I ever imagined. And we got a lot of publicity. We earned a lot of money. We got a lot of corporate sponsorships. We had a local company here, Alaris, underwrote our first event for $10,000. So the kids came out with, by the time they sold all their booths and other sponsorships, they came out with a really nice profit. Well, I mentioned that corporate responsibility was part of our corporate structure. So we said, well, what are we going to do with our funds? Rather than go to Disney World or Cedar Point, they said, well, why don't we fix up our classroom and turn it into, try to turn it into a national model for green classrooms. And although Beechwood High School was a really nice place to teach, our classroom looked like every other 1950s or 60s high school building. I mean, the kids would have to stand on the desk to turn on the heat or the air conditioning. There were, leaking ceiling tiles that we would have to put buckets, down for. So you guys can imagine taking this space and then really transforming it into what you're seeing here in ThinkBox. And we toured places like this to come up with what are the materials, what does it take for the chairs, the carpet, the paint, the lighting, the air conditioning, the heating and cooling. How do we change our teaching styles to reflect sustainability? The momentum we got from that little project led us to presenting all over the country in Washington, D.C., receiving awards in New York City alongside Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio and Alicia Silverstone and all these people that were doing amazing things. And then there was little old Beechwood, Ohio's marketing class that built this model for a green classroom, and all of a sudden it received a lot of national attention. So flash forward, we did Green Dream Business Expo for 4 more years. We did a total of 5 years. Because every August or September when the next class came in and I said, what are you guys going to do this year? They said, well, let's build off of the success of the year before, put our stamp on it, and then take it to the next level. By the 5th year of the Green Dream, we had outgrown our original expo space. We were adding a 200-foot long by 60-foot wide tent in the parking lot of the space. And we had 170 plus vendors. We were having annual revenue close to $100,000 in sales that the kids were generating through selling booths and sponsorships. And we were doing some really amazing things. Like you guys, I get bored easily, as I'm sure you're thinking right now. The only thing between me and lunch right now is this guy standing in front of me talking, so move it along, Perry. So I was having that same feeling you're having right now, like it's time to change things up. So sustainability, our tagline with Green Dream was it starts with one person, one decision, one step at a time. So we were hoping that sustainability would sort of get ingrained in everybody, and as you guys all well know, it's now sort of the norm that in our schools and our businesses and our homes that we recycle, that we're aware of, energy alternatives and that kind of thing. So what was the next big thing that we could tap into? And of course we were sort of in recessionary times, and Case Western's a great example of, in education, what was happening. Case Western was no longer allowed to just research to research. They had to do their research and bring it to the marketplace. Parker Hannifin, a worldwide company here in Cleveland, Ohio with 60,000 employees, billions of dollars of revenue, was no longer allowed to just research to research. Their research had to be driven to the marketplace, or the marketplace was driving their research. So I kept reading and reading and reading, finding that these companies and universities and institutions are trying to do a whole lot more with a whole lot less resources. So innovation, that buzzword innovation, was popping up everywhere. And Cleveland had really become an entrepreneurial hub of the Midwest. So all we did was put the words entrepreneurship and innovation together and came up with Entrovation. Still a difficult word for a lot of people to say, but as we branded it, we always dropped entrepreneurship and innovation under the words that people could see where this made-up word came from. So we did Entrovation for 2 years. This year's class came into class in August, and I said, well, what are you guys going to do? And there's 45 students brainstorming ideas of things that they could sell, or do we want to have a rock concert down in the flats, or what do we want to do? In the end, after a week or two of brainstorming and SWOT analyses, they decided that they were going to take on Entrevation one more time, but put their own personal spin on it. If you are from the Cleveland area, you know that in the last couple of years, the positive vibe for Cleveland has come so far. In my 23 years of teaching, this was the first class that I ever had that did not want to leave Cleveland, that had the upswell of pride in Cleveland. The Cavs, the RNC, LeBron was back. Everybody was feeling the pride and joy of Cleveland. So we created a little tagline, from Aurora to Avon, we all call Cleveland home. Because when we travel, if you're in Florida and somebody asks where you're from, we all say Cleveland. Whether you're from 30 miles away or not, we all say Cleveland because it's recognizable. So that in your work there, or in the handouts that we gave you, you can see that they took the Entrevation logo, they added the CLE, which is of course our airport code, to it, and they branded it with all the colors of the Cavs and the Indians. Found that great, we had a photographer go out and do the skyline. So they created Entrevation CLE, and this is our website. So the kids then start to create the structure of the company. And you can see on the little card there what the kids are actually selling. So they're selling a single booth space, 8-foot by 8-foot area with a 10-foot or a 6-foot table for $195. That's easy for a student to sell. Not all students, but most students could sell a booth for $195. We spend a lot of time at the beginning of the year going through our spheres of influence. Everybody understand a sphere of influence, networking. I have one classroom rule in my class. It's worked for me for 23 years. Schmoozing works is my only classroom rule. So I encourage them to become brown nosers, teachers' pets, kiss butts, whatever they need to do, because that's the way the world is actually going to work, in my experience. It's not a fair place. It's all about the connections and the relationships that you develop. So we spend a lot of time that first month of school looking at our spheres of influence, and then taking that, when they identify their spheres, and then their parents and their parents' spheres, and then they start to look at the businesses that those people are affiliated with. And then we sort of put it to the litmus test. What's that business doing that's innovative or entrepreneurial? So then we identify about 600 leads, and then we go out and we try to sell. So here are high school seniors that are not professional salespeople at all, going out and pitching a $10,000 title sponsorship, a $6,500 platinum sponsorship, a $1,000 bronze sponsorship, a $195 booth, or $350 booth. We set real sales goals for them that are linked to their grades, and our district has always approved that as a assessment tool. So we spend the whole year working on, as a company, on a project, learning all the principles of marketing, and selling is one of those really important things. So their grades are tied to their ability to sell, which is a bit unusual, but it's certainly very motivational, and that was my experience over the years. So this year we added a really cool dimension called the Young Entrepreneur Market. So in addition to all of the not adult businesses, like you might be thinking seedy adult businesses, in addition to all of the established businesses that are operated by adults, we created a young entrepreneur market where we featured 50 young entrepreneurs, so middle school, high school, and collegiate age. There were, Chris, did you guys all meet Chris from Every Key here? Or you've heard of Every Key?
Yeah.
Okay, so Chris was one of our young entrepreneurs several years ago. We had a Innovative Entrepreneur of the Year competition affiliated with Entrevation for our first 2 years. Chris won that, but the focus of this year's Young Entrepreneurs were, let's get 50 of them, add them into the mix of Entrevation, and see how they give them the opportunity to sell their goods and services. It was by far one of the most successful parts of our event this year by far. People loved the young entrepreneurs. So as you're creating your maker spaces or looking at your, what can the students do to create a product and sell it, the support from the community. We had about 5,000 attendees at our event this year. The young entrepreneurs cleaned house. One really neat story I just heard is we had a company called Three Kings Bakery. Two of the guys had already graduated from high school, and they were freshmen in Tri-C here in Cleveland. The other one was a senior in high school. They they all went through the culinary program, and they decided that, or they became bakers of specialty breads and desserts. At the event, they sold over $1,200 in sales, but they have already received orders for this month for well over $1,500 in sales. So that was really good money for a couple of young men, and because of their sales now, they recognize that they can sustain their business. So we had bakers. We had a girl from Solon that her company was called Hug-A-Beds. Talk about a great sustainability kind of idea. She took old sweaters, big old men's and ladies' sweaters, would sew the arms together, sew the bottom up into it, and created dog beds. So she'd stuff the arms so it would give them the area to support. And then for every bed she sold, she donated a bed to a rescue shelter. So that girl sold out all of her inventory that day. So it's really great, not everybody was every key, but there was a lot of really cool young entrepreneurs doing cool things. So we had 180 companies this year, 50 of them young entrepreneurs. We had, 33 sponsors, something like that. Tremendous success. Tremendous in the brand. 40-some dollars coming into work that they bill, and profit. Well, that goes back into paying for the students' leadership training. I took 23 of them to a professional conference in Orlando with those expenses, or to pay for those expenses. We seed next year's company, so next year's company will come into the beginning of the year with some seed money to do whatever they're going to do. What are we going to do next year? We've already got that one figured out. Actually, this year's class already, it's not usual that we would tell the next class what they're going to do, but in this case, we needed to start the branding early. We are doing an event similar to Entrevation called Noise. So maybe some of you will be connected and want to participate in something like this. How am I doing on time, Barb? 3 more minutes?
Yeah, 3. Great.
Okay.
Take 4 if you want.
Nobody wants that.
No.
I'm not sure why that's not coming. So a couple of years ago, our science and math coordinators for our district went to the national Washington, D.C., and they recognized that what the National STEM Expo was not that dissimilar from what Green Dream and Entrevation were. So they planted the seed with me maybe a year or 2 ago that wouldn't it be a great idea for your class to take on the STEM Expo? And of course, my first reaction was, hell no. That is nothing that I am interested in doing, because we had a model that was working really well for them. But then the superintendent sort of tapped me on the shoulder and said, wouldn't it be a great idea for your class to take on the STEM Expo? And when that happens, we all know that becomes a different story. So you know, being a marketing and entrepreneurship teacher for as many years as I have been to all kinds of conferences. Of course, when we go to the our conferences, we spell STEM, STEAM, and we add the extra E for entrepreneurship. Those of you that go to the arts ones, they spell it STEAM with an A, and arts are represented. I was fighting really hard that we could spell STEM with the two E's, but that one did not work out for me so well. And I tried to tell them, I said, you know, you've got 45 marketing students that you are asking to run the STEM Expo. These kids that have signed up for marketing because they do not like science and engineering and mathematics. They're the creative type. We're going to have to come up and make it a really fun event somehow. So I said, let me work on the branding with these kids for a little while. So they came up with NOISE, being the Northeast Ohio Innovative STEM Expo. So usually the word innovation to tie off of entrevation. So we have our continuum of sort of the entrevation, coming up with a really cool logo. So we were trying to create a little sizzle with STEM. And one of the girls from West Geauga said, you know, if I was told next year that I was working on the STEM Expo and I had to go out and promote STEM to all of these kids, I'm immediately going to eliminate 50% of the people that would even perhaps be interested. But the word noise, I could be intrigued with the word noise. So from a branding perspective, that's where we started with the name and the logo. The colors are, of course, the color cartridge color, cyan, magenta. So that's sort of our, you know, trying to make it fun and youthful. So it will be we'll have companies coming in doing hands-on demonstrations, activities for kids. So our audience is K through 8 primarily, but probably K through 12. We'll have another young entrepreneur marketplace. So if your students are producing products and they would like an opportunity to have a very large audience of people to sell it to, April 22nd, 2017, we will be doing the Noise Expo at Beechwood High School. Apollo Robbins, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the gentleman thief Apollo Robbins. He'll be coming in. He does shows in Vegas and stuff like that. So he'll be our keynote speaker twice that day in the auditorium. And then we'll have probably another 120 companies participating in a STEM marketplace. So that's what we've got on the agenda for next year. So that's a little bit about my classroom, how I've trained them to think of themselves as entrepreneurs. So I've been at Beechwood for 10 years now. This year we had former students of mine coming back as business owners that had their own businesses in entrevation. We had students coming back that were working for companies that said, this is a valuable place for our company to be represented at. So it's been really neat to see the transition of them from high school students to them being, you know, 30 years old now and doing some cool things. When they go off, 100% of my students go on to college. It is, you know, it's a very competitive program. Those 40 students this year raised $4.8 million in college scholarships because they can really develop their resume with these kind of things. And they come back from their college, they come back from graduation, and they say, from their college graduation, say, I just talked about Green Dream or entrevation in my job interview. Nothing in college I did was as hands-on or as cool as what we did in high school. So it's definitely a transformative experience for them to be a part of this environment. All right. Any questions or?
So I'm in Warrensville.
You look really familiar. I've seen you around. Yeah.
We don't have a connection though to this program.
To Excellence.
We go to Cleveland Heights.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what our kids who want to be marketing? We go to Cleveland Heights.
Correct.
So is Cleveland Heights or anything comparable to this?
Nobody does it. In the United States.
We got to talk.
Yeah. And that's what I've loved about being a marketing teacher is nobody tells me what I have. I mean, yes, I've got the marketing standards, I've got web exams, I got to get the kids proficient in those things, but every marketing program is so unique. It's just the style that has worked really well for me. And the interesting thing about that, some people might be familiar with the other national student organization called DECA. I used to be heavily involved in DECA until I was at Cuyahoga Falls when we went into fiscal emergency, and the superintendent pulled the plug on all student activities. The curriculum director came to me and said, we've got this great opportunity called Junior Achievement. Would you ever think about it? There's no cost to your school, no cost to your program. When I did my first year of Junior Achievement, we didn't do anything like this. We sold flip-flops or something. I realized the strength of JA as a national student organization, and that changed my whole teaching career. And it was because of being in a school district in fiscal emergency that led me to this platform. So.
Any other questions?
Yes, sir.
I want to make a comment. I took a class with Walter Sakura, the entrepreneurship 311, where the Everkey was made in that class, and I think 2 of your students came in.
Probably.
They were selling to us.
Yes.
And I came from a territory sales background before I came here. And they sound like the guys I was working with. It's all coming together now. So
Right. Yeah, we were. Yeah.
How did they
Thanks.
do?
Really well. I thought they were in college. They were in high school.
Yeah. I mean, we're sending them into the corporate boardrooms of large companies, and they are having to deliver. So. Okay. Good. All right. Well, thank you all. Enjoy your lunch.
Well, hopefully Greg has given you some other things to think about on the far end of the